We know that as soon as something goes against the interests of America, it wastes no time imposing sanctions. To fulfill its objectives, it exerts pressure through this powerful tool called sanctions. Everyone is familiar with this response from the US. Now, something similar has happened with the International Criminal Court. The US has imposed sanctions on the International Criminal Court. In this video, we will discuss this decision of the US and talk about the effectiveness of the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court, or ICC in short, is the court that prosecutes individuals for serious global crimes. What does serious global crime mean? It means that a person is involved, for example, in war crimes or has committed crimes against humanity. These are considered serious crimes. In such cases, the International Criminal Court initiates legal proceedings against the individual. An example of this is that in 2023, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin for war crimes. At that time, this move by the ICC was welcomed by the US. But now, the US has imposed sanctions on the very same ICC. Why? Because this time, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Along with Netanyahu, the ICC also issued an arrest warrant for Israel's former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes in Gaza. This made the US unhappy. These warrants, issued in November 2024, were considered outrageous by the US. And why wouldn't they be? Israel is an important ally of the US. The US obviously had no problem when the arrest warrant was issued against the Russian president. But when the ICC tried to hold the Israeli PM accountable for crimes against humanity, the US did not like it. In response, the US passed a bill in its lower house based on which sanctions will be imposed on individuals of the ICC. Just like India has a parliament with two houses, the Lok Sabha, which is lower house, and the Rajya Sabha, which is the upper house, the US also has a Congress with two chambers. The lower chamber is the House of Representatives and the upper chamber is the Senate. A bill has been passed in the lower chamber, the House of Representatives, called the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act. From its name, one can understand its purpose. Illegitimate refers to unlawful or unauthorized actions, and counteraction means to oppose or counter any action. So the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act is aimed at countering illegal actions of the court. This act has been brought forward to counter any illegal actions against US nationals and nationals of US allies. According to the US, sanctions will be imposed on any foreign individuals who investigate, arrest, or initiate legal proceedings against its citizens or the citizens of its allied countries. This bill grants the US this power. The ICC is based in The Hague, Netherlands. This new act will impose sanctions on individuals associated with the ICC who participate in legal action against the nationals of the US and its allies in any way. This means that the people of the US and its allies are being protected from being targeted. Any foreign individuals involved in this will face actions such as visa restrictions and property blocking measures by the US. By the way, this is not the first time the US has opposed the ICC. It sometimes cooperates with the ICC and at other times opposes it, depending on its national interests and geopolitical considerations. The US has a very complex relationship with the ICC. It selectively engages with the ICC. The US welcomes ICC decisions when they align with American interests. For instance, when the ICC makes decisions against US adversaries, the US supports the ICC, even assists in investigations and prosecutions. In other words, the US fully cooperates when its foreign policy objectives are met. But when decisions are made against the US or its allies, the US opposes the ICC and resists its jurisdiction. This suggests that when national sovereignty is involved, international justice goes for a toss. For example, consider the case in 2020 when some ICC officials and employees were investigating war crimes committed by US armed forces in Afghanistan. The US imposed sanctions on them at that time. Even now, when it comes to the Israeli Prime Minister, the US is imposing sanctions. But when it comes to the Russian president, the ICC's arrest warrant is welcomed. So, do you see? It's all about achieving one's own interests. This is the reason why African countries criticize the ICC. It is able to punish only the leaders of weak countries. It has no authority over strong and rich countries. The ICC ignores the crimes committed by the leaders of powerful nations. Because of this, the ICC is accused of being biased, and African countries see it as a tool of Western imperialism. According to them, the court promotes Western interests. As a result, the ICC faces global criticism. The ICC was established through the Rome Statute. It currently has 125 member states. The US and Israel are not parties to this treaty and do not accept the ICC's jurisdiction over their citizens. So, even though the ICC was created to reinforce international humanitarian law and accountability, if a country does not accept its decision, there is little the ICC can do. The ICC may issue an arrest warrant, but it has no mechanism to execute or enforce its decision. The ICC depends on the cooperation of its members. It does not have an enforcement mechanism of its own. Therefore, if someone does not accept its decision, the ICC can only encourage compliance, make public statements, and attempt to create pressure, but it cannot enforce its decision. Take the case of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin visited Mongolia in September 2024 despite an ICC arrest warrant against him. As per the rules, Mongolia should have arrested him, but it did nothing. Instead, it welcomed Putin with open arms. Later, the ICC even told Mongolia that it had failed to comply with the court's decision and had obstructed its functioning. In response, Mongolia argued, "How can we arrest Putin? We are economically dependent on Russia. Our energy supplies come from Russia and we follow a policy of neutrality." End of discussion. The ICC could not do much. This time too, when the US imposed sanctions, the ICC stated that the decision undermined international justice mechanisms. It warned that if the US proceeded, there would be no accountability for such serious international crimes. But this had no impact on the US, which continued its ironclad support for Israel. The ICC could do nothing. Then Poland, a US ally, also openly stated that when Israeli PM Netanyahu visits Poland during the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, he would not be arrested. This means that ICC arrest warrants are being openly defied. So, this raises questions about the effectiveness of the ICC. Sure, you have created an international judicial body, but it lacks any mechanism to enforce international law. Nations openly defy your orders, citing their sovereignty and diplomatic relations. You can do nothing except encourage the execution of your orders, and yet nothing happens. In such a situation, what will happen to the justice of the victims of serious global crimes? Powerful countries will do whatever they want. Any decisions that go against them will be labeled as overreach, and they will refuse to accept them, calling them unfair. The leaders of powerful countries will get away with even the most serious offenses. The jurisdiction of the ICC is very limited. Major powers like the US, China, Russia, and India have not ratified the Rome Statute. Additionally, the jurisdiction of the ICC is limited only to crimes committed within the territories of its member states. Even then, it depends on the cooperation of the member states. If member states refuse, as Mongolia refused to arrest Putin and Poland refused to arrest Netanyahu, the ICC will not be able to take action. Although both Mongolia and Poland are member states of the ICC, they openly defied its decisions. This shows the limits of the ICC's power. Yes, there are provisions that in special cases, the jurisdiction of the ICC can be extended to non-member states as well. Either the non-member state must accept the ICC's jurisdiction over crimes committed on its territory, as Ukraine did, leading to an ICC warrant against Putin, or the United Nations Security Council can refer a case of crimes committed in a non-member state to the ICC. This occurred in Sudan and Libya. So, while there are provisions, overall, the ICC faces severe constraints in enforcing international justice. How limited the ICC's authority and effectiveness are can be seen in the cases of Putin and Netanyahu. I hope you gained some insight into this topic. That's all for this session. Thank you for your time.